What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the third-person and action RPG tutorial series, we are going to be going over Hitscan interactions and combining our interaction system. So at this point, we pretty much have our full system for interactions, both with overlapping and Hitscan, which means we can look at an object like that chest plate, press E to interact with it, and we will pick it up, and then we can put it on. Additionally, I can go over to an item on the ground, say this axe right here, and I can press E and equip it here. So our system works with both overlaps and look at behavior. We have almost a fully functional system. We have two things that we want to fix, one of which is the removal of hacky logic that was using all the overlapping actors and instead use our new logic with just the interact actor. And the second one is just cleaning up our logic so that we can remove all our temporary and testing logic and removing a lot of duplicate behavior that previously existed but we no longer need due to the changes that we implemented in the last few episodes. So that's what we're going to be going over today. Before we hop into this episode, if you want to get caught up in the entire series and check out how we've done things like health bars, enemies, our quest system, and a lot more, I'll link you to the entire third-person action RPG tutorial series right here in the top right corner. Alternatively, if you are just interested in the interaction system, I still recommend you watch the previous episodes of the interaction system, as we have done quite a few episodes on interaction, but every one was useful. We kept expanding upon our logic each episode to get us to where we are now. I'll link the first episode of interaction in the third-person and action RPG tutorial series right here in the top right corner. And with that out of the way, we can go ahead and get started. First things first, let's go and start by cleaning up our logic because this is going to take the vast majority of the episode. This is a code and blueprint tutorial series, but today's episode is mainly going to be cleaning up blueprint behavior, so that's where we will start. First thing we want to do is go to our base character BP where our interaction logic in the blueprint is. So third person CPP, blueprints, characters, base character BP. In the previous few episodes of interaction, we had this interact BP2 or interact blueprint 2 because we have code interaction logic, and then we had logic that was specific to the type of item that we were interacting with. And because these components weren't previously created in code, we needed to have the blueprint counterpart so that we could grab those components, such as the mesh and interaction box. We've now converted these components to code, so we don't have to do all of this for each item individually. When we know that we have an item, and we know we do because interact actor is an actor, and when we go in here we cast the default item, we can just use that for all of our behavior. So everything here in interact BP is valid, but it's a lot. We can remove a ton to clean this up. So interact BP2 is a little bit better than our original interact. It's very similar to how we handle interactions in our initial version of interact, except the initial version used all overlapping actors of a certain type and loop through them, whereas interact BP2 takes our interact actor, which we've determined in code, and then handles it accordingly. So I'm going to go into my event graph, and I have my interact BP event calling interact BP2. This means everything else that was tied to interact before. I'll slowly scroll through it so you can see it. All this behavior here is going to be removed. And now we just have interact BP calling interact BP2. We can compile and save, and we can go into interact BP2. And in here we have our default item cast. So if our interact actor is of type default item, we were checking what item it was. However, now when we look at the logic, this isn't useful. If it's an item, we cast it to base item BP, but we don't do anything different with base item BP than we do with base weapon BP or base equipment BP. You'll notice these are all exactly the same, even to the point where we're calling add to inventory here. We're just passing in an item, which is of type default item. These are all children of default item. Set visibility, same. Set collision enabled, same. They all go to the same game mode reference to check if items are static or not, and if they are static, we destroy them. Again, all of this behavior is exactly the same, which means we don't need to get the item type or perform the switch statement on it, and that means we only need one of this line of logic. We don't need three. So, to make this simpler on ourselves, we can remove these two nodes. we can remove our casts on each of those. And we can remove 2 of our branching sets of logic here. Now we can start moving our logic down so that it is all in one spot. And I'll move it over. I'm going to get rid of some excess reroute nodes here. And I'll try and line it up with the execution pin. And now we're looking pretty good. We have some reroute nodes that are way too low here. We don't need them to be down there. And now we just have to connect a few things. So we have our casted default item. So only if it is of type item do we want to do any of this. So this part is valid. So casted default item has this as default item. And we can drag this into the item mesh and the item interaction box, which we set up in the default item class. So if we go to the header file here, you can see we have our item mesh and item interaction box. We set these up in a previous episode of the interaction system. Now we have some additional reroute nodes here that we don't need. There's a lot going on. So I'm just going to remove this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. So I'll move this over a little bit more. And this reroute node should go into this add to inventory here. So we have default item going into add to inventory. And to clean this up, I will give the interaction box reroute node a little bit more room. That way it is fully separated here. Just make sure we can read everything. Doesn't have to be perfect, just cleaning it up since we did do some major changes. And the only other thing we need to do is make sure that our destroy actor also has this default item. So I can drag it in from the reroute node here. And I can handle this however I want. Something like this will do just fine. And there we go. So our new interaction logic is simply take the parameter, cast it to default item. If it is of this type, then we grab the item mesh and item interaction box off of it. We check if collision is enabled already. If it's not, we don't do anything. If it is any of the other types, we add it to the inventory. Then we set the visibility to hidden because we have removed it. We picked it up from the world, so we want to hide it. This is specifically to the mesh of the item. And we disable the collision on it as well. Again, it's being added to our inventory. We don't want the one in the world to have visibility or collision still. Then we have this section here where we're using our game mode reference to check a boolean that exists called rItemStatStatic. So I have a comment on this, but this is something we made earlier in the series, which determines basically if items can have randomized stats or stats that can be altered or changed based on your build, or if the stats are always based on the item itself. So another way to think of this is that when we pick up a weapon, we just have it forever. It's not like an inventory management thing. We just pick it up and we acquire it. So at that point, we're destroying it from the world. We're not saving any of the stats about it out right now or anything like that. We'll always be able to reference it at a different point. And so at this point, we would want to actually destroy the actor that we are equipping because we don't need it anymore. If the stats aren't static, then we don't destroy it because the thought is we will do other things with it. And we do use this boolean all over the place, so I'm sure you've seen it. But don't worry about it too much for today's episode specifically. Just if you're supporting that in your game like I am in the series, make sure that you do have this logic set up the same way here. But now this is our interact logic. And I never really liked the fact that we had interact BP and then interact BP2. I was just doing that for testing. And in fact, I do want to take it out of here. So I'm going to copy all the nodes we just set up and I'm going to move them out to interact BP. Then the only thing we have to do is make sure in the cast here we are passing our interact actor in, which is a variable that our character will have. Then we don't have an interact BP and interact BP2 because that is just repetitive. So that means we can remove interact BP2 entirely. And we can compile and save at this point. Now something I want to do in the very near future is just convert this to code because at this point it's cleaned up, it's ready to be in C++, but we'll skip it for today's episode. At this point, we can go back to our game, launch it, and test out our behavior. So we're going to come in here and pick up a few things. We can pick up a sword and an axe, and we should be able to equip them, unequip them, or switch between the two. And we do have an issue with some of the collisions still being available on the item meshes when they're equipped, but that is something that will be addressed very shortly. We do have another inventory episode which is going to address that sort of thing, because when pulling something out of our inventory, it should have the right types of collision. But if we launch another session and try with our weapons and armor, say a helmet and a sword, that should also work, and we should be able to equip and unequip as well. So coming in here, we're going to grab our sword and then grab our helmet, and we will be able to equip both of them at the same time and unequip them. And once we do that, we know that we've done everything correctly, so we are good to go. So there you go, guys. That's how you can clean up your Interact BP and your interaction system in general and make it work for overlap and hit scan or look at behaviors. Additionally, we fixed up a warning or an error with our logic in doing that. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. It does more for myself and the channel than anything else you can do, and I really appreciate it. I want to give a huge shout out to the YouTube membership, Patreon, and Discord subscribers who are so amazing and continue to support this channel day after day. Thank you, guys. If you ran into any problems while editing your interaction system or with any of my videos in general, feel free to check out the Discord community. There is a link in the description, and I'm happy to help you out with any problems you ran into. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.